Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Aaron and today's topic is going to be on what we call diatonic chords. Now don't freak out, we're not going to get too heavy into the theory. We're going to try to move through that in a way that's not too thick, but we're going to talk about basically chords that belong to specific keys and how to build them, how to use them from one key to other, meaning how to transpose. Basically we're going to do what a capo does. So without further ado, let's kind of dive into this topic. So the first thing that you really need to know is how to build a major scale. And the major scale, if you don't know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, it's built of a series of whole and half steps. Okay, so what's a whole and a half step on a guitar? If we play from fret 1 to fret 2, that's a half step. If we play from fret 1 to fret 3, that's a whole step. So 2 frets is a whole step, 1 fret's a half step. And so the major scale has this sequence that goes like this: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now we're going to do it on a single string here because it's easier to visualize, it's more linear, okay? And then we'll maybe play across the strings. So we're going to build a major scale, okay? And so if I start on this note C here, on the first fret of the second string, we're going to make a whole step from C, 2 frets to D. Okay, now we're going to go from D, 2 frets to E. That was our whole step and our whole step. Now E goes to F via just a half step, 1 fret. Okay? That's important to know there. That's the part on the piano where there's no black key in between the E and the F. It just goes directly from E to F. F goes to G via a whole step. Okay, G goes to A via a whole step. A goes to B via a whole step. And then we have another half step sequence right on the end, B to C. And again on the piano, no black key between B and C. Okay, it takes a little while to get your head wrapped around this, but first of all, here's the scale. Hopefully just by ear you're all familiar with that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, okay? But it's important now to try to figure out, okay, from C to D is a whole step, D to E is a whole step, here's our half step, E to F, F to G, whole, G to A, whole, A to B, whole, and then B to C is our half step. Okay, so this is our first kind of course of action, is to understand the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's also a good idea to maybe put a number value on each tone. So instead of saying, for instance, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're back to 8 or 1 again, the octave. Okay, so we know we've got tones 1 through 7, and then 8's the octave. We also know that in between each tone there's either a whole step or a half step based on this sequence. So we're starting to get some information that we can go, okay, I know the rules. I can start formulating some plans here, okay? So the trick about guitar is that in other stringed instruments is we can do that kind of same sequence going across the strings this way. And it's kind of hard to visualize that this C note going to the next string open is 2 frets. Okay, it's much easier to visualize that C up 2 frets on the same string to D is a whole step. But when you try to tell a beginner or somebody that C, hey, to this, let's go down now over here and to this open next string, that's the same distance. Very confusing, okay? But over time you're going to figure out how this instrument works, going across the strings in terms of the intervals. Now, one thing I would really recommend is to get yourself a PDF sheet of the entire fretboard with the notes, the note names, and use that as a reference so that when you're doing these exercises, you can make some sense of what we're talking about. Okay, just as a review, we've built the major scale, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We figured out that it has a whole, half, whole, half sequence to the scale. That's the only sequence that makes major. We can't change that. We can't do a half step in the beginning and a half step because it's not going to sound major anymore. It's going to sound different. Okay, now here is what we need to get to. We need to build chords from the tones of that scale. So let's see if we can pull this off. If we take thirds, meaning every other note of the scale, so if we take the first tone, the third tone, and the fifth tone of the scale, that gives us a major chord. Okay, so here's the, again, one more time on the scale. Okay, if I play the first note, skip to the third note, and then skip to the fifth note. Okay, did you hear that? C, E, G. Okay, that is a major triad. Okay, and we can't obviously play it. Sorry, C, E, G. We can't obviously play these three notes on the same string. So we have to find them on different strings so that we can sound them all at the same time. And when you look at this chord and you analyze the notes in the C chord that you're familiar with, you're only going to find C, E's, and G's in that chord. All right, it's important to remember that the music theory can be used on all instruments, on a voice, on a guitar, on a saxophone. It's not specific to one instrument, and the idea is that you can communicate with other people once you kind of get the foundations dialed in. Okay, so just jumping back to the guitar, I can play that same scale I did on the second string. I could start it here an octave down on the fifth string on a C note, and I could follow the rules and do a whole step and a whole step and a half step and a whole and a whole, whoops, and a whole and a half, and I would still get a major scale. And that's the whole point, is that these rules apply. It doesn't matter what octave you're in or what string you're on, or in terms of other instruments, what fingers you're pushing down, or what valves you're holding on a trumpet. Same concepts apply. Major scale, whole, half, whole, half, and we'll keep going over that and kind of repeating it a lot, because it just takes a sec to get this stuff. Okay, so we build the major scale. We know that it's got the sequence whole, half, whole, half. We talked about pulling out the root, the third and the fifth, the 1, 3, 5 of the scale. And we're starting to see now how a chord gets built from the scale. So let's just back up one more time. We did that C, this E, and this G note from this when I played the scale on a second string. So in other words, the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale. Okay, and that gives us C major, okay? And we said that, the reason we play shapes like this that we're familiar with is because we can't play these three notes at the same time on the second string. It's impossible. We can only play one note on one string. So we have to find a C and an E and a G on different strings to make the chord. And that's what, again, referring to that PDF, if you can find a big PDF or I can post one, you're gonna start to go, okay, I see that, every note that I'm pushing down, including the open notes I'm strumming, those are either C's, E's, or G's, and there are no other notes. They're roots and thirds and fifths, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build a sequence of chords from the major scale. If we take out the first, third, and the fifth like we just did, we figured out that makes a major chord. If we take out the second note now and we play in thirds, or pull out notes in thirds, so the second note, the fourth note of the scale, and the sixth note okay, we get D's, F's, and A's. And if we put those together, we end up getting a minor chord. We have a different sound here. So I took the D note, the F note, the D note, the F note, and the A note. Can you hear that? Pulled those out of the scale that we built. That was every other note starting from the second note of the scale. Then I put them all down here, and I end up with a minor chord. Okay. So why is that? Why is it that if we pull out the first note, the third, and the fifth, it gives us a major chord, but now if we pull out the second, the fourth, and the sixth, we get a minor chord? Well, the answer is in the intervals. And this is where it gets a little bit nerdy, but hang in there and let's see if we can figure this out. So if we go back and look at the major chord, the first note to the third note, okay, we're going to look at how many half or whole steps that is based on our original sequence. Okay, so if we go from the first note to the third note of the scale, that's like going whole and then another whole. So if you see, that's 2 whole steps when we play the C note to the E note. Okay. Now when we play the E note to the G note, take a look. I've got the half step I got to cross in the scale, so a half step and a whole. I only have 1.5. So let's see if we can kind of make sense of this. So in the C chord, C, E, G are the first, the third, and the fifth tones. We've got 2 whole steps in the scale between the first and the third, but we have 1.5 steps between the third and the fifth, right? Because we had to use that half step, like we said in the sequence. So the rule is a major scale is really built of an interval of 2 steps from the root to the third, and then an interval of 1.5 steps from the third to the fifth. Okay, I know that's a little bit much. It's a little bit technical, but see if you can kind of process that and think about that, okay? So the notes themselves are the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. Remember, I'm saying notes of the scale, or tones, 1, 3, 5. But between the notes, we have distances or intervals, right? So between the first and the third, we have 2 steps. Between the third and the fifth, we have 1.5. So that formula gives us the major chord. Now let's jump over to the second chord that we built from the second and the fourth and the 6 notes of the scale. So the D, the F, and the A, okay? And let's look at it. D to F, okay, right away, we can analyze it and look and see that there's only 1.5 steps because, again, we have to think about that sequence we started with. From D to F, we've got the D, E, F. You can see the half step here. So the minor chord right out of the chute is different from the major chord because the interval that it starts with from the first note to this note is 1.5 steps. Okay? So now the second one, and when we play from the F to the A, is 2. Okay, so what happens here is the sequence that we originally started with, again, the whole, half, whole, half thing. Okay, when we build triads, we're building those across sometimes half steps and sometimes whole steps, and what it does is it flops the interval of the chord that you're building. Again, I know that probably sounds a little bit technical, but you're going to have to look at a PDF, kind of visualize it, start poking around, playing these notes and hearing and seeing on the guitar the difference between 1.5 steps and 2 steps. But let's just back up in general. The rule is on a major chord, we've got an interval of 2 steps, 1.5. On a minor chord, we have an interval of 1.5 steps and 2. Okay, there's always 3 notes in both the chords. It's just that we have a different set of intervals. So it's going to take a minute, but we'll keep talking about it. We'll keep analyzing. We'll punch through together. Okay, so here's the thing. Now let's come full circle. If we're to do this on every single note of the major scale, so again, we have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 8. We end up with chords that are built off of each tone. So the C chord, then the D minor chord, the E minor chord, the F chord, the G chord, the A minor chord, the B diminished chord, and then back to C. Now you notice those were not all major chords, or they're not all minor chords, right? Because that sequence of how we built the major scale is going to dictate how these triads are built. And you're going to have to dig in and look at those. But I'll tell you right now, the 1 and the 4 and the 5 chords, so the chords that start on the first note of the scale, the 4th and the 5th note, those will be major. The chords that start on the 2, the 3, and the 6, those will be minor. Okay, the 7th, I don't even think I'm going to get into it. It's called diminished, and it's a little bit different than major and minor that I just explained. We'll maybe leave that out for this video and come back to it, but it's altogether just a different chord than major or minor. But you're going to notice, again, 1, 4, and 5 chords are major, and 2, 3, and 6 chords are minor. And all those chords, this is where we get back to diatonic, or belonging to the key. They come directly from the scale. They're not coming from any other place, and therefore they belong to the key. Okay, so if we have a C scale and I play a C chord, this is the 1 major chord that belongs to the C scale. If I play D minor, this is the 2 minor chord that belongs to the C scale. If I play E minor, this is the 3 minor chord that belongs to the C scale. If I play F, this is the 4 major chord that belongs to the C scale. If I play G, this is the 5 major chord that belongs to the C scale. If I play A minor, this is the 6 minor chord that belongs to the C scale. And again, we're going to leave out this 7 diminished chord because this is a little bit different. Okay? So the next step is, okay, great, we're starting to understand how these chords belong to the scale. We know which ones are major, we know which ones are minor. Now, if we change the key, so instead of playing a C scale, if I play, for instance, a G scale like this, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, okay, I'm gonna kind of do the same process. Okay, by the way, did you notice I had an F sharp in this G scale? G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Why is there an F sharp note? Well, if we follow whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, okay, it puts us on an F sharp note. If that sequence was, if we tried to use a regular F there, that would be altering the sequence of the major scale, and it wouldn't sound major. It would sound like this. Okay, that's not a major scale. It's a different scale. But so the reason that sharps and flats enter the picture is because we are following the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half sequence. And we always have to have that interval sequence. And if we don't, then we have to adjust with a sharp or a flat to make sure that it follows whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so that's why we add an F sharp to the G key. Okay, now if we went through and did the chords in G, G would be our 1 major chord. Our second chord is minor, A minor. Okay, so let's do kind of a like or as thing. So in the key of C, C major is the 1 chord. In the key of C, D minor is the 2 minor chord. Well, that's like in the key of G, G is the 1 major chord, A minor is the 2 minor chord. Okay, so this is now we're kind of doing what the capo does on our own. We're understanding what's going on. Okay, so this stuff takes a little while to process. Again, visual aids are really a good help. They're a good reference or something. You know, get that PDF, get a sheet. Okay, and then because we have to make sense of where these notes are when we hold these kind of chord grips that someone in the beginning of your guitar journey says, hey man, you know, this is a good one to learn G or E minor. It's good to know, well, what's happening in that chord? What actual notes are in that chord? And can I go, oh yeah, I see there's an E note, there's a G note. That's my, you know, 1.5 steps, and then G to B is my 2. So E's, G's, and B's, if I put those together, yeah, that makes an E minor chord. And then to identify where they are on each string on your instrument, etc. You could start making this stuff, start making sense of this stuff. So I'm going to put up some references to this, and I'm going to have a link where I actually have a little bit of, I have a free PDF on my website that you can check out that hopefully helps you with this. Okay, here's a couple examples of 1 to 4 to 5 in a couple different keys. So let's start with the C key. So a C chord, move into an F chord, move into a G chord, and back to C is 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay, so that's great. And what happens if that doesn't work for us singing or any number of reasons? We still want to do 1, 4, 5, 1, but we want to move to a different key. Well, we need to find the scale first. So let's say we move it to the key of G. So we have a G scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We're going to find 1, which is G, G, A, B, C, which is 4, G, A, B, C, D, which is 5. So now we have G, C, D, G. We just did 1, 4, 5, 1 in the key of G. That's the same as C, F, G, C. 1, 4, 5, 1 in the key of C. I could do it in the key of D. Here's a D chord. G is 4, so D, E, F, G. And A is 5, D, E, F, G, A, back to D. So, okay, let's do one more. Let's do the key of A. So A moves over to D, A, B, C, D. Okay, 1 to 4. And then E, that's the 5, A, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to A. So A, D, E, A. So I just played the same progression in 1, 2, 3, 4 different keys, right? And again, the capo would do this for you. You could take a G, a C, and a D shape, put a capo on. Okay, it's going to move it to another key. You don't have to do anything with your fingers but play the same shapes. It would move it to another key. We want to know how to do this kind of on our own, understanding the keys, okay? So the next thing is to include some minor chords. What if we played the 1 chord to the 6 minor chords? So in other words, in the key of C, we played C, C, D, E, F, G, A, okay? And we're, again, playing a minor chord because if we looked at that, if we built, a triad from A, then we skip to C to E. If we looked at those 3 notes, we would have 1.5 steps and 2, which is, we learned, is a minor triad, okay? So the 6th chord, remember we go to the 6th chord, we can't play major there, we got to play minor. So C is 1 to A minor, 6 minor, okay? If we wanted to do that in the key of G, G is 1, E minor is 6. Okay, if we wanted to do that in the key of D, D is 1, and B minor, is 6. All right. So you have to practice these, and you have to get a handle on which chords are major, which ones are minor, and then which ones are, I think of them as families. The key of C is a family, the key of G is a family, the key of D is a family. Which ones belong to each other, right? And then practice a chord progression in one key, and then move it into the other key, and then move it into the other key. And this is really good. This will help you with songwriting. This will help with, understanding, basic songs, pop songs, and other songs, and how to switch keys. And this is a lot of really good information that can really help your music and moving forward with some stuff, and kind of demystifying how a lot of these songs work, and how players can just get together and jam and move songs to other keys, etc. So hope this all helps you out, and hope it wasn't too technical, trying to keep it simple or easier for the beginner and the intermediate, etc. So let me know in the comments if it's helpful. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.